Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Habitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong, strategic, national security-oriented policies. Our movement consists of more than 20,000 people in Israel, including many, many reserve officers and operators from all branches of the Israel Defense Establishment who believe that strong national security and staunch Zionism are necessary for Israel to be the eternal homeland of the Jewish people. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into these war briefings. It is so important to us that we are able to share these updates and analysis with you. I'm joined today by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of IDSF, and we are going to spend today's session really diving deep into the many, many questions that all of our viewers have submitted. So during this session, if you have any questions, you could, of course, feel free to email them to me, or you can directly type them into the chat, and we will try to get to them. Thank you, General, for joining us today. As you know, last night, the world brought in the new year 2024 with fireworks and all types of celebrations. And here in Israel, a little past midnight, there were rockets coming out of Gaza, showering down or attempting to shower down on Israeli cities. So, General, are you able to shed a little bit of light how, with all of the intense IDF operations in Gaza, Hamas is still able to fire rockets into Israel?
Well, we are not yet in control of all of the Gaza Strip. There are places that we didn't operate in yet. And also even, I would say, in places that are overall under the Israeli army's control, especially north of Gaza. Control means that we destroyed the main capabilities of the brigade, battalions of Hamas. It doesn't mean that there are no terrorists at all. Now, if there is a launcher somewhere in a backyard that we didn't find yet, they might be able to shoot. Now, we know that Hamas still has a few hundreds of long-range rockets, which they are planning to shoot during the coming months. They want to continue doing it as long as it's possible for them. So it wasn't surprising that they were able to do that. But we have destroyed huge amounts of rocket launchers and rockets, and their capabilities are degrading dramatically. Eventually, we'll bring Gaza, like in Judea and Samaria, to be a place with no rocket capability at all. But this is a long process that might take a year.
Thank you. More and more reports are coming out from the hostages and their experience, the tragic experiences in Gaza, how they were being kept not only by Hamas, but by quote unquote Gazan civilians. Are you able to shed some light on who exactly is a Gaza civilian and how is the civilian in Gaza different than an agent of Hamas?
So I would say that overall, the whole society, the whole Gazan society has undergone very radical indoctrination during the years. Even before Hamas, this was a very radicalized society. During the last 17 years of Hamas, it became even much worse. I mean, people from kindergarten are taught to hate Jews, to cherish death. And they undergo military training for the age of 4 or 5. So this is the society we're dealing with. And even if we cannot say 100% are all Hamas, but the vast majority is definitely very largely supportive of Hamas, very hateful of Israel and Jews in general. And this is the society is assisting Hamas in many ways.
There is a discussion about an Egyptian envoy coming to Israel to discuss another ceasefire agreement for Gaza. What are your thoughts on a ceasefire at this point?
So the more we continue the military pressure, and at the moment, I would say we're witnessing a pretty historical moment where the IDF is operating in Khan Yunis with 7 brigades. I don't recall any war that we deployed so many brigades in one place. This means that this area is really the center of command and control and the center of gravity of Hamas. And destroying it can become a real game changer that might include also the destruction of the leadership of Hamas and also hopefully reaching to hostages. So these are very defining weeks that will define basically what we're going to see moving forward in this war.
The humanitarian aid that is entering Gaza, is that helping the IDF and helping the war cause, or is it slowing down this war and enabling Hamas?
Well, I think that one of the most basic things that for thousands of years human beings have done in wars is to conduct a siege on a place and prevent this place from getting food or water or munition. And this was supposed to be a basic thing that Israel was supposed to do in this war, but we see the huge pressure from the administration to bring in not only food and medicine, but also gas, and this is devastating because most of it is going to Hamas. Hamas is basically taking like 80% of everything that's going in, and there is more and more going in, and this prolongs the war, and this endangers our soldiers. And it's something that we need to deal with at this stage by taking over Rafah, controlling the Egyptian border, and if something comes in, we need to be in control. We need to see and control who gets it and prevent from Hamas terrorists to be able to supply themselves.
A little bit of a different question. How does the IDF deal with the psychological health of the soldiers, of the reservists in Gaza? Are there social workers on staff? Is there a protocol to pull them out of Gaza, give them downtime? Is the IDF worried about those types of issues, the mental health of the soldiers?
Yes, I think there is, in the last decades, growing awareness in the army of everything that has to do with mental health, and there are social workers embedded in the units. And also soldiers can get it also when they come home, and the army supplies psychologists and so on. Our soldiers have seen real atrocities, terrible things. Some of them have nightmares, and it's definitely something that we need to deal with. I think that one of the issues is that soldiers sometimes are ashamed to say that they need help, and therefore the commanders need to encourage them and make them understand that there is no shame in having difficulties in experiencing this kind of difficulties, because sometimes it looks to the soldiers like if it's not, I don't know, masculine enough, not macho enough, if you say that you suffer from, I don't know, nightmares or things like that.
Thank you again to everyone who is submitting their questions right now. All of the terrorists who are being rounded up, captured in Gaza, and being taken and put in prison, where are they going? Does Israel have enough room for all of these prisoners? Is that a growing concern, where all these people are held, how they're processed, how they're tried?
Yeah, so we are opening new places, organizing new places. We did that in the past, so there are solutions for where to put them. But I would say that generally speaking, there is a problem with the amount of jails and place in Israel overall. It's something that we need to seriously deal with. There was an attempt to do something similar maybe to what exists in the States, like private jails. But the Supreme Court stopped this process, and this requires the government to find solutions and budget more jails for the future.
The Rafah crossing in southern Gaza on the border of Egypt, will the IDF at a certain point take over the crossing to really control what's coming in and out?
Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed this issue, I think, yesterday, saying that Israel must control the Egyptian border, and controlling the Egyptian border is also controlling, of course, the Rafah crossing. We cannot prevent the flow of weapons into the Gaza Strip if we don't control the Egyptian border. This is maybe the most basic thing we need to do.
Okay, I'm going to ask the last question for right now on Gaza, and then we'll move to other subject matters, which is something we've spoken about many times, but it's always interesting to hear. How do we clean up Gaza and make sure that this issue doesn't emerge in another 5, 10, 20, 50 years from now?
So from a military point of view, we need, once we destroy Hamas, we need to control the Egyptian border, and we need full freedom of operation for the IDF everywhere in the Gaza Strip, just as we have in Judea and Samaria. So in any scenario where there is a terror cell somewhere, we need to be able to go in, out, and take care of that. And to achieve this freedom of operation, this is a long process. It's a lot of work to dismantle all this terror infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. The other issue is really about how you deal with the education of the society that has been radicalized, and a complete need to reform that and take out UNRWA and all these terrible organizations in Gaza and completely change the way they're educated. And this is a very, very long-term process. And of course, encouraging migration from Gaza to people who want to migrate, this is always also a good option, simply to have less Gazans there.
The U.S. is planning to withdraw the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier strike group from the Mediterranean. What implications will this have in terms of deterrence of Hezbollah?
So I don't know why the U.S. is now doing that. I think that it's not only about deterring Hezbollah, it's about really pushing the buildup of a coalition and preparing to deal also with Iran, which is the core problem here, and really the center of gravity of everything that's going on around us. And I think that the U.S. should show leadership and be willing to pose a credible military threat on Iran and the Houthis, and the militias in Iraq and Syria and Hezbollah. And for this, there is need of forces. America has many forces in the Middle East, but it's always good to have more. And the question is not just what real capabilities the U.S. has in the Middle East, but what kind of message is it to Iran and Hezbollah? And this is something that is unclear. We'll have to see.
Is the U.S. pressuring the IDF to speed up the war or to slow down the war?
So when you speak to the leadership of the IDF, they insist again and again that this is not the case. That they are committed to the destruction of Hamas, that they have time, that they'll take all the time needed to achieve the goals that the government set.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. The Iranian warship that's moving into the Red Sea, what can you share with us about that and how it affects the whole dynamic now?
So Iranians have a very clear strategy, wanting to control the main strains like Hormuz, like Bab el-Mandab, and even the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf. And in this sense, when they threaten world trade, I think this is the place where the U.S. should show leadership, even thinking a ship or two of the Iranian forces, sending a message. If you continue like that, we can sink the whole Iranian Navy. But I'm not seeing this kind of leadership.
You cut out there a little bit, so I'm not sure if you addressed this, but can you just explain what is the Iranian interest in terms of cutting off the supply routes and the commerce? Does that feed into their mission of destruction of Israel, or is it a separate goal entirely?
The Iranians have global aspirations. This is not just about Israel. They want to be a global force. They have a vision that is way beyond the Middle East and Israel. And part of this vision is really controlling world trade through the control of the strains. So it's not just Israel's problem. This is a global issue and needs to be addressed globally with a global coalition.
And is Israel seeing partnership with the Arab states in the region for this global stance against Iran?
So before the war, we were already in a process of building this coalition, American-Israeli Sunni coalition, and I think there is a motivation to go back to this coalition after the war in Gaza, and maybe even before we deal with seriously with Hezbollah. And the motivation is there. There's an understanding that in order to deal with the Iranian aggression, we need to join hands and work together against this threat.
Before the war, IDSF was, of course, very active in stopping the whole insubordination of reservists in the IDF. And one of our viewers asked a question about insubordination right now in this war in Gaza. Is it an issue? Are there issues of Air Force pilots not participating in the operations?
No, I don't think there is any issue of this kind, but we have to say the truth. We paid a huge price for the insubordination that was before. It completely destroyed our deterrence. It emboldened Hamas. They were really convinced that the army is not functioning, the Air Force is not functioning, and this is what gave them the really boldness to do what they did. So the outcome was devastating.
Let's now move to the northern front, Hezbollah. What is happening right now with Hezbollah?
So Hezbollah is continuing to challenge us along the border, and the way the IDF is dealing with it at the moment is systematically destroying all Hezbollah positions along 5 to 6 kilometers, like 4 miles. In Lebanon, anything that is Hezbollah along these areas is being dealt with. Why this? Why 4 miles? Because this is the range of the anti-tank missiles and we cannot at the moment deal with all their long-range rockets and missiles, but we can deal with not having commando forces and anti-tank missiles shot at towns and bases along the border, and the IDF is pushing them more and more north.
The Israel-Jordan border has long been a quiet border, and obviously there's been increased issues with smuggling, but now there's discussion that Hezbollah could launch an attack via Jordan. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, we see militias, mostly Syrian and Iraqi militias, along the Jordanian border in the north. And this is something that is dangerous. The IDF is following that. And we have to be ready. There might be an attack from the Syrian-Jordanian border. And this is something that requires the IDF to be very alert.
Thank you again to everyone sending in the questions. The Iron Beam laser system, is that operational in Israel? And likewise, is there a munitions problem for Israel to have enough supplies to do what is necessary?
So it's not operational yet. There is initial operational capability, but probably it will take a year or two to see a certain level of operational capability, mostly for short range rockets. It's a very, very advanced and sophisticated technology, but because of that, it's something that takes time to develop and deploy.
And then in terms of the supplies, the munitions that Israel has, is there a concern that they're dwindling right now and we need to be restocked?
So there is all the time flow of munitions from the US to Israel, and also the Israeli industries are producing munitions all the time. In wars like that, you always feel that you need more and more, and the demand is huge, and the army is trying to meet all the needs of the forces, but there is always a certain amount of shortage, and it's something that is part of the way you handle a war, to understand how much munitions you have, and this is part of the planning is taking in consideration this fact. I think that Israel did a mistake not to build much more capabilities in Israel, enabling our industries to produce much more. It's something that we alerted already 10 years ago. I was involved in that, and unfortunately, not enough was done. And now we're trying to do the best we can. And I think that in the coming years, we'll see a huge change talking about what will be produced in Israel and the capabilities to supply the IDF from Israeli industries.
Thank you, General, again for entertaining all of these questions. Last week, in one of our briefings, we touched on the issue of Judea and Samaria, and you noted that you believe there needs to be more Jewish towns and cities developed in Judea and Samaria. Many of our viewers asked if you could expand on that. Why is it important for there to be an even greater Jewish presence in that area of Israel?
So basically, what really creates security is Jewish towns. The more Jews live in an area, the more secure the area is, and we see it very clearly, not only in Judah and Samaria. We see it in the Negev, we see it in the Galil, in places where you don't have dominant presence of Jews, you simply don't have security along the roads, in the parks, or anywhere else. And This is why all the strategic places in Israel, whether it's the Golan Heights, whether it's the Negev and the Galil, whether it's Judan, Samara, are places that we need massive Jewish presence, because this is really what secures Israel and gives the IDF the freedom of operation. I think this is a basic thing in Zionism, something that the Zionistic movement from day one understood perfectly well. But for some reason, the most basic understandings, we simply forgot them. And we have to go back.
Okay, I think we lost the general. His reception went out. So let's give him a minute to return, and if not, we'll end the briefing 2 minutes early. Just a reminder, many of you are writing in great questions. A bunch of these questions we addressed in the beginning of the briefing today, and many of them we've addressed in previous briefings. So everyone is, of course, invited and encouraged to check out the recordings of these briefings, which we post on our website. The address for the website, you can see it on your screen right now, and we also send it out in the daily email. General, are you back with us?
Yes.
Okay, you cut out for a second.
Yeah, so I said in Zionism, from the very beginning, there was an understanding that without towns, you don't have security. It's the most basic thing that you can say about living in Israel. So this is why, I encourage it everywhere.
Thank you so much. Final question. The IDF always, of course, is recruiting the 17, 18-year-olds to join the army. Is there any sense that people are less or are more hesitant to sign up to be recruited into infantry because they're potentially entering a worse situation? Any numbers being given about recruitment to the IDF now?
No, it's on the contrary. They say that this is the heart of the fight, and then they want to go and join combat engineers, the infantry. They understand that this is where serious stuff is going on. So I think the motivation overall of the young generation is very, very high.
That is amazing to hear, the Jewish spirit, the Israeli spirit. And I noticed you said combat engineers first of all of the different infantry units.
Well, from Napoleon's time, they said that the queen of the war, the artillery, the combat engineers are the kings of this war.
So that means you should be wearing a crown right now.
Yeah, they're really dealing with all the underground infrastructure, and it's the number one force that everybody is asking for and needs to achieve the missions more than anything else.
Okay, Brigadier General Amir Avidi, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, for another briefing. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, take care.